Football Podcast. With your hosts, Ashley and Michael, please sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Undroppables Playbook, a football podcast presented by the Undroppables. I'm your host, Ashley. This is my lovely co-host, Michael Duncan. I would ask how you're doing tonight, but you're kind of distracted because you just found out that Ben Simmons was traded.
Yeah, I don't know if it's real or not. I can't tell if this dude is Woj retired today. I don't know if you saw that.
He went back to St. Bonnie.
And now I can't tell if this person that is seemingly taking over for him, is an actual person or if it's just an account that isn't an actual person that is memeing about the fact that,
that Woj is gone.
No, now it says parody satire, and it was not there.
There we go.
Okay, so never mind.
So you're less distracted. So how are you tonight?
Oh, terrible. Absolutely
why?
horrible. Because I had to watch the Philadelphia Eagles on
So
Monday.
did I, and I'm not terrible.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yay.
Talk about it more later.
We'll talk about that one later.
Nothing positive
We will.
to say at the moment.
Yeah. Not too far down the line, though. Week 2, terrible. Oh, my God. That was a brutal one. We'll talk about all of that in a second. We have just a little bit of news today. We have a lot of injuries, so we'll let Duncan give us his 15-second frenzy before we talk about our injuries. But biggest news, some big news. Let's talk about first, the NFL announced their list of 167 modern-era players that are eligible to be inducted in this year's 2025 Hall of Fame class. If you're new to how this works, in mid-October, that list will be narrowed down to 50. Then in the late fall, 25. And then we'll get our 15 finalists at the Hall of Fame annual meeting, which happens before the Super Bowl. This year, we have 94 offensive players, 56 defensive, and 17 special teams. Really quickly, I'm going to list the first-year eligibles. In order to be eligible, you had to have played 5 full seasons ago. So this is your list of people who are now.
You had to have last played 5 seasons.
Sorry, that's what I meant. That's how I phrased it weird. So first year eligibles are quarterback Eli Manning, running back Marshawn Lynch, running back, punt returner, kick returner Darren Sproles, wide receiver Demaryius Thomas, tight end Vernon Davis, tight end Jeremy Shockey, center Ryan Khalil, center Travis Frederick, guard Marshall Yanda, linebacker Luke Ketchley. Why am I not saying that right?
Keekly, what are you doing?
Dude, I don't know. I'm going so fast, and I knew that sounded weird coming out of my mouth. Linebacker Terrell Suggs, defensive back Aqib Talib, safety Earl Thomas, and kicker Adam Vinatieri. Those are all of your people who are eligible for the first time this year. And that, again, what?
I just feel like we're back in 2012 pre-draft, and people have no idea how to pronounce Keekly.
I know.
What the heck was that?
I don't know. That was my bad.
That was painful.
All right, and the only real big piece of news we're going to talk about in this section is the fact that last year's first overall pick, Bryce Young, is being benched by the Panthers. They opt to start Andy Dalton instead. Being kind of guarded about the decision and the conversations of how involved David Tepper was in those decisions. In the press conference, he said, I really don't, the head coach had talked about, when head coach and GM had kind of talked about, we don't really want to talk about it. He's benched. We're trying to move on for now, at least. This isn't the end of us and him. We're benching him, seeing what we can get going. Our season's already in the toilet, basically. They started 0-2. They're along with a big group of other people who started 0-2, but they bench.
They were an embarrassing 0-2. And also, it's always funny. That's not something we're really considering. Coach Dave Canales said about the possibility of trading former number 1 overall pick Bryce Young, and he also says that he believes that Bryce Young can be a franchise quarterback, and they still consider him the franchise quarterback of the future. Just very
right.
I'm not saying it was the wrong move, but how often do we see a team and a quarterback come back from that?
Not often. They come back a lot later with another team.
Yeah, if at all. Yeah.
Hair is really driving me crazy. We were talking about it beforehand. I have to fix it. Brought out a huge wave of support from across the NFL from a lot of people who used to be associated with the Panthers. A lot of people who started out their careers not so hot and are having a better time later in life. Who say that, listen, Bryce Young, this isn't the end for you. Just keep going, keep pushing, keep your head up. So a big big wave of support from bystanders in this situation. But for now, we have Andy Dalton, and all I can think about is the picture last year where he threw the interception. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm gonna have to find the picture. I'm gonna have to find the picture while you talk about something else for 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, what I was going to talk about was I was actually going to ask you what
Okay.
you thought of Darren Sproles as a Hall of Fame candidate, but I'll just give my little spiel first then.
Go ahead.
I do think he's a very interesting candidate. I think he's one of the more interesting candidates in recent years because there's not many guys quite like him in terms of like what he did in his career. So he's 6th all time in all yards with 19,696. He's behind Frank Gore, Emmitt Smith, Walter Payton, Brian Mitchell, and Jerry Rice. Brian Mitchell and Frank Gore are not Hall of Famers. Obviously, Frank Gore is not eligible yet. Brian Mitchell is eligible. However, he has not made the Hall of Fame. So as an Eagles fan, it's been very interesting to wonder, I guess, what his eventual candidacy is going to look like. He had a total of 3,552 rushing yards in his career, which is like not a lot for a running. He actually had more receiving yards. He had 4,840 receiving yards in his career. Meaning that he had over 10,000 all-purpose yards that came from non-rushing or, yeah. So very interesting. I just think it's really going to put to test like what they're looking for in the Hall of Fame, because when you look like all-purpose yards is just not something that people really talk about a lot in terms of return men. I forget, is that Devin Hester made it last year, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think he did. But I don't think there's many others outside of him, and he's like one of the greatest return guys of all time, and he did it mostly through like touchdowns and that kind of stuff. Darren Sproles was just really good at everything, but not like the best at anything. He had 7 total punt returns and 2 total kick return touchdowns in his career. It's just going to be very interesting. I'm very intrigued to see the way it works out, because just as a football player, as a dude that played football, he's really, really good. He did a lot of different things that helped a lot of different teams. However, if you look at any one of those things individually, it's not a Hall of Fame candidate. So just going to be very fun to kind of see how that turns out. And I don't think he'll be a first ballot. I do hope he makes it eventually, although the fact that Brian, and I'll be honest, I don't know a ton about Brian Mitchell, but the fact that he's not in there does make me worry about that a little bit.
Yeah. I put a link in the show sheet. Can you open it and play the video?
Yep.
It's the video of Andy Dalton that I was thinking about from last year when he threw the pick against the Cardinals. This is all I can think about with Andy Dalton now, is this specific camera angle, photo, GIF, meme, all of it. Yeah. That one.
It is, in fact, Andy Dalton.
It is. That's the one. All right, Duncan. We are going to switch it up today, and we're going to put you to the test of 15-second frenzy a little earlier. Hope your brain's warmed up and ready to go. For those new here, 15-second frenzy is a segment where Duncan has 15 seconds to tell us whatever he wants about every NFL game from this week. I will have a timer up on my phone, and I will tell him to stop, and he has to stop after 15 seconds. If he finishes before then, he's allowed to move on. If not, I have to stop him. And we'll chat a little bit after. But let me know when you're ready.
Ashley, I was born ready.
Okay, ready, set, go.
Buffalo versus the Dolphins. Miami never made this a game, and unfortunately, it was before Tua got hit with another concussion. I'm guessing we're going to talk more about it, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it here. Josh Allen said that he felt like the guy who did no work in the group project but still got the win, and honestly, he's kind of right this week, mainly because he didn't need to, thanks to James Cook. Saints versus the Cowboys. Life was good on Sunday watching the Cowboys get absolutely dismantled. Also, I guess the Saints might be a legit team. They've continuously had decent defenses, but the offense is clicking on all cylinders right now, seemingly thanks to Clint Clint Kubiak. It's going to be really fun to see if they can keep this up throughout the whole
Next.
season. Buccaneers versus the Lions. Watch out, the Bucs might also be a real team. Suddenly, NFC South doesn't look like absolute garbage anymore. I'm still not really worried about the Lions, but the Bucs did prove that they are legit this week. Watching Baker be successful is really fun, but so is watching Jameson Williams have a really strong start to the season after a rough start to his NFL career. The Colts versus the Packers. The Colts, for the second straight week, found themselves a few plays away from winning a game it felt like they had no right to be anywhere close to winning. Not really sure what that tells me about the Colts or Anthony Richardson for that matter, especially seeing as the offense hasn't been particularly good to start the season. Meanwhile, the Packers managed to pull out a win without Jordan Love, and their center threw up on the ball. Jets versus the Titans. It really feels like the Titans are trying to be the most embarrassing team in football this year, and they are certainly in the running. Will Levis hasn't looked particularly good, or at least not consistently. There's still time, but they are certainly on their way to proving me right and being bad. The Jets, meanwhile, did manage to bounce back, even if in an unspectacular fashion. Niners versus the Vikings. Sam Darnold MVP? Maybe. The Niners will be without CMC and Debo for a while. And Brock Purdy's turnover luck has certainly gone the opposite direction so far this season. I have no clue what to think of the Vikings, to be honest. They could be having a miracle run right now, and in 3 weeks we could all be laughing about how misleading the start of their season was. Seahawks versus the Patriots. If the Steelers are the worst 2-0 team I've seen in a while, the Pats might be one of the more impressive 1-1 teams, at least compared to expectations. They upset the Bengals week 1 and followed it up by taking the Seahawks to overtime this week. Shout out to Gerard Mayo, who's clearly doing something right, especially with the lack of talent on that roster. Meanwhile, the Seahawks continue to be weird. Giants versus Commanders. God, the Giants are terrible, and the Commanders aren't much better, but they did manage to win this game. Again, for both these teams, I don't have a lot of takeaways because it's just really both of them sort of beating up on bad teams. I don't know. Ask me again next week. Chargers versus the Panthers. Speaking of bad, the Panthers are that. The Chargers won 26-3, and Justin Herbert barely had to do anything. J.K. Dobbins continues to steal the show in L.A., and it's so cool to see him balling out the way a lot of people thought that he would when he first came out of college. Also, shout out to QJ for the 2 touchdowns this game in a bounce-back sophomore season. Browns versus Jags. The Jags. They are not doing my confidence in them any favors whatsoever. Doug Peterson's commitment to Press Taylor as an offensive coach might legit get him fired from yet another organization. I don't get it. I really don't. It's really frustrating because I see the throws Lawrence can make. Dang. Raiders versus Ravens. And now we've got the best 0-2 team I've seen. The Ravens have not had a good start to the season in the luck department, but they're as talented as ever. I don't really have too much to worry about in terms of their ability to bounce back this season. I do have to hand it to the Raiders, though, who are making me eat my words from last week, putting up a very impressive win over those Ravens. Rams versus Cardinals. Marvin Harrison looked awesome. The Cardinals remembered who they drafted early in the first round. I feel bad for the Rams because seemingly their whole team is just dying, and honestly, there's not really a lot they can do about it at this point. Regardless, the Cardinals seem like a team you have to keep an eye on moving forward in a seemingly suddenly open NFC West division. Steelers versus Broncos. God, the Steelers suck, but they are also 2-0. Mike Tomlin is going to keep his job again somehow. Also, the Broncos suck too, and Bo Nix has looked pretty horrendous, although he had one of my favorite quotes of the season when he was asked about an interception that he threw. Just really good stuff. Bengals versus Chiefs. I swear the Chiefs will never play an AFC contender without there being some sort of storyline related to the refs or people thinking it's rigged for them or whatever. It was a really good game and the exact opposite and it was the exact sort of bounce back you want to see from the Bengals, even if they lost the game. Maybe there still is some hope for their season, which is not how it felt after week 1. Bears versus the Texans. Closer than it should have been, but Caleb Williams is doing the best he can, seemingly with CPR dummies as his offensive line. He has no time to do anything, and I hate seeing that with young quarterbacks because we've seen what that can do to damage their development long term. Houston has some things they need to iron out, but being 2-0 is a really good place to be sitting while they do it. And then Falcons Eagles. If my toaster could have reached my bathtub, I wouldn't be here tonight. Unfortunately, I had to watch the end of that game and live to tell the tale. Nick Sirianni might not make it through the season because his decision-making is inconsistent at the worst times. Kirk is still watched, and honestly, I have no idea what's going on with the Eagles defense.
The Bo Nix quote was my favorite.
That was great.
Truly, they said, like, what happened on that interception? And he said, yeah, so I just I dropped back and I threw it to the other team.
Yeah, no, it was great.
That was the quote.
She's like, yeah, that is an interception. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Good point. Well said.
I think another.
He has a very, I don't know what kind of accent, but he has a very specific and like somewhat thick, whatever accent he has. And I didn't know he had that accent.
Where's he from?
No idea. Played at Oregon. That's all I know. Wait, did he play at Oregon?
He did. Is he Mormon?
Why do you think he's Mormon?
I don't know. Something in my bones tells me that he is. It's from Arkansas.
Oh my no!
What?
He was born in Arkadelphia.
Oh yeah.
I have absolutely talked about the fact that I don't think Arkadelphia is a real place, right? On this
Yes.
podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, for any of those that don't care, but I'm going to say it anyway. A couple years ago, a friend of mine, he called me to tell me that he was taking a job in Arkadelphia, Arkansas to coach baseball. And I was like, that's funny. I live in Philadelphia, by the way. And then like a week later, he's like, hey, man, so like, can I see you before I move? And I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm moving to Arkansas. I was like, no, you were kidding. Arkadelphia is not a real place. And it was and is.
Yeah, so he's from Arkansas and then grew up in Alabama.
Crazy.
Another great quote from the weekend I wanted to talk about was your comment about Caleb Williams, right? There's this awesome interaction between CJ Stroud and Caleb Williams at the end of the game that was caught on film.
Would you call it awesome?
I think
I would have chose a little uncomfy. And shout out to CJ Stroud
hits and everything. Like I think CJ, I like it from CJ Stroud's perspective. Like Caleb didn't want to hear any of it. Yeah,
but Caleb
didn't want to hear any of it.
Like, but shout out to CJ for the way he handled it, because
that's what I meant more so. Like, that was my perspective on it.
Is blow me off like that.
Yeah. So CJ Stroud had went up to Caleb Williams after the game and tried to offer him like advice. So Caleb doesn't really want to take it. He kind of starts pushing away and CJ Stroud kind of like brings him back. But he says, man, you got to stop taking those hits. Like you have to stop. And Caleb Williams is like, yeah. And he, CJ Stroud's like, you're going to have a great career, but you got to stop getting hit, dude. I think it's hilarious. The dude's only 1 year old. CJ Stroud's only 1 year older. I saw a tweet that had said, like, this man's giving wisdom to Caleb Williams. This man might be generational. Like, that's like one of those moments that's like you're 1 year older and you're given this type of advice. I loved it from CJ Stroud's perspective, but this is the video.
Good job out there, bro. Yeah. Hey, stop taking those hits. Yeah. Learn from those mistakes. And everything that you got, bro, is in you already, bro. You're going to be a hell of a player in this league. All right, boy. Appreciate it. For sure.
Like, dude started walking away, and he was like, nah, man, like, listen to this. Like, listen to me. Shout out to CJ Stroud, because I would have been a lot more pissy than he was. He was like, bro, I get your, again, I've never lost an NFL game before. Yeah. CJ Stroud has lost an NFL game before and probably knows what that feels like better than I do. Caleb was just like, nah, I'm good, man. But important. Really a cool interaction. I don't know.
Yeah. I more so mean awesome from CJ Stroud's perspective, because I think it's really cool to like the human side of it, that he understands what it means to be somebody with a lot of pressure on your shoulders and walk into a place, while CJ Stroud walked into a place that was better than anyone could have expected. A place that's not the greatest in the moment. You're gonna take hits, you're gonna face adversity in your first year, especially if you're drafted that high. So trying to give some wisdom, some perspective, I think shows a lot of his maturity and like a leader presence from him, because that's how even Caleb Williams, when he tries to pull him back, starts listening. He's a real leader, that kid.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the Eagles, because you always do?
I don't really want to talk about them.
Talk to them?
I'd love.
Is this like that Abbott Elementary? So you haven't seen Abbott Elementary.
I haven't. No, so I'll be honest. I definitely deserved the whole Saquon dropping the game-winning.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely did with the way I was texting you. And I admit that. I am brave enough to admit that. However, it is super frustrating. And so I've given a lot of flack to a lot of coaches on this podcast with inconsistency and bad decisions when it comes to going forward on fourth down, that kind of stuff, aggressiveness. And I've always been very high on Nick Sirianni for that reason. And now, as he's gotten more responsibilities taken away and really become a CEO head coach, this was about as bad of a game as I think I've seen him call in terms. There's one particular decision in the Super Bowl that was a little rough. I think that's beside the point. That was 2 years ago. But in particular, I do not have an issue. First of all, I don't have an issue with the whole going for 7 instead of 3 early on in the game. That was a very hot topic in the Undroppables Twitter DM group chat.
Yep.
I just think, like, if you're really that upset about that, then you don't like the new age of football, and that's fine. But also, like, just take the 3. just take the points is literally my least favorite argument that has ever existed. And now I'm just going to get pissy about the internet for a second. But that pisses me off. You're not actually presenting an argument. You're just like, hey, points, sick. And then when the Eagles lose by 1 point, they're like, oh, shoot, could have used that 3 points from earlier in the game, couldn't you have? It's like, no, shut up. That's not how that works. Not at all. Everybody on this planet knows that if they had taken the 3 points earlier, which regardless of whether or not you think that's a good idea, obviously the rest of the game would have looked different from the Falcons' end of things and the Eagles' end of things in terms of the decision making. Shut up. Yeah. Shut up. I hate that argument. Pisses me off so much. It's so stupid. The point of going for it on 4th down and not taking an easy 3 is admitting that sometimes you're not going to get it and you will lose out on 3 points. However, it's doing it often enough that the difference is made up and you end up getting more points out of it by going for it on multiple times when the analytics say that it is an appropriate time to do it. I'm not talking just every 4th down, go for it, but like on logical points. The thing that pisses me off is also not that they went for a passing play on that 3rd and 3 it was to Saquon Barkley, because one, it was the right call. Saquon was wide open and he had the 1st down. If they execute, it's game over, and no one's talking about it. And the fact of the matter is they loaded that box to hell, as they should have been, because the logical thing to do there is to run it. Like, I get it. Sometimes you're like, oh, are you outthinking the other team? Are you outthinking yourselves? You're overthinking. It's like, no, I understand. I understand that some people will just run it down the middle, run 40 seconds off the clock. Fine, whatever. Especially when you have the tush push to go to on 4th and 1. However, he was wide open. Jalen Hurts put the pass in the perfect spot. He dropped it. It happens. It's execution. It's not the decision.
That exact same play, like frame for frame, he did at the Giants before. Like, it happens. It just, I'm not saying it's like he messed up terribly. Like, he should have caught the ball, yes. But like things like that happen. He's over his back shoulder, reaching for it. He spins.
I mean, it was in his hands. It was in his hands.
It was. But it frame for frame, he had the exact same drop for the Giants.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling. The decision that I have a problem with is not going forward on 4th and 3 after that drop pass for so many reasons. One, the biggest one is the fact that you took it from a 1-possession game where you're up by 3 points to a 1-possession game where you're up by 6 points. All that does is incentivize the Falcons to be more aggressive and go for the touchdown rather than waiting and trying to get 3 points. Teams are always less aggressive when they only have to get a field goal to tie the game rather than getting a touchdown to win, because the mentality that it's fairly obvious why you would be less aggressive, because you don't need as much, just go to overtime or whatever it is. And also there's like a bunch of statistics that I read that I don't know where I read them. It was on Twitter and they had sources, but it's about it's about like
you sent
how,
it to me.
Yeah, I probably did. About how it is not really ever a good idea to go up by 6 instead of up by 3 when you're in that position, because it just doesn't work out for you. The other thing is that, yeah, like that's the main thing, because if you get the touchdown there, it's game over. If you get the 1st down, it's game over. And honestly, even if you don't get it, they're deep in their own end zone, and you took more time off the clock, or not in their own end zone, in their own field, like they're deep in their own territory. They have a longer drive that they have to handle, and you can't be aggressive sometimes. Like, you just can't. That it was so backwards. You go for it on 4th and 3 because you should be. And a whole different conversation is, if you know you're going to go for it on 4th and 3, which I guess they didn't, is why not run the ball even if they did load the box, because then you can take 40 seconds off. And again, execution, it all would have been over. But the decision for me is the problem is that you didn't go for it on 4th and 3. There was no reason to take that field goal. I really, truly believe that. The problem wasn't the offense, though. Jalen Hurts looked really, really good. I thought they lost AJ Brown on Friday very suddenly. And Britton Covey apparently was having a career day. That's not ideal. Also, I love Britton Covey. It's not ideal when you're designing plays to get to him.
You and I were texting. He had more catches,
More
yards,
catches.
everything in that game than he did in his entire career because he was used
leading
like
up to that.
almost exclusively as a returner.
No, it was exclusively as a punt. I know he literally has catches, but he's taken like
does.
10 total offensive snaps before.
I know,
that
but
game.
he still has like almost
Yes.
exclusively. It's not
Yes.
fully exclusively. So he had a literal career game.
Yeah. Yeah, the defense is just a mess. I don't get it. Bryce Huff is a 0 out there, quite literally. I mean, his jersey number is
I met
0.
him.
Sick. I couldn't care less at the moment. Just really couldn't.
Islanders game.
I don't know if it's Vic Fangio. I just don't know. I need to look more into it this week. I need to listen to the people that I trust that are very good at breaking down film so I can learn more. There's obviously bright spots. I think Quinyon Mitchell, the rookie, is legit. The cornerback, he is legit. He's had some rough plays here or there. Any cornerback is going to do that. Any rookie cornerback is certainly going to do that. But he's looked really, really great. The pass rush has been non-existent. Kirk Cousins is old and washed. The Atlanta Falcons defense gave up 1 billion pressures to the Steelers last week, and the Eagles couldn't do anything. And that's not good. That's not good at all. And they need to fix that. They need to figure that out. They need to it's not great, but it's not
great.
game over.
It's awesome.
It's not, season over, but it certainly doesn't feel good when you should have beaten the Falcons, especially on a week where the Niners and the Cowboys lost, and you could have taken a large step toward the number 1 seed, having already beaten the Packers. So
instead, you fall victim to week 2 chaos. Craziness. All right, really quickly, because I forgot to do it earlier. We have our players of the week from those games Duncan just described to you. On NFC, on offense, we have Saints running back Alvin Kamara, who went 115 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns, and that's all rushing, and then 65 yards and 1 touchdown while receiving. I would nominate Clint Kubiak for everything. He is so fantastic out there lately. On defense for the NFC is Falcon safety Jesse Bates, who has 12 tackles, 2 pass breakups, and the game-sealing interception against the Eagles. Special teams kicker is Commanders kicker Austin Siebert, who set a franchise record for 7 field goals. He was signed just 5 days prior to this game. He hit from 27, 45, 26, 27, 33, and 30. On AFC, on offense, we have Bills running back James Cook, who had 95 total yards, 78 of those rushing, and 3 touchdowns. On defense, we have Raiders defensive end Max Crosby, who had 6 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 1 pass breakup. And on special teams for the AFC, we have Texans kicker Kaimi Fairbairn, who hit from 59, 56, 53, and 1 extra point. A quote from NFL.com on Kaimi Fairbairn is that Fairbairn has flexed his strong leg 2 weeks running in each of his first 2 games. Fairbairn has connected on 3 field goals of 50-plus yards. No other kicker in NFL history has done that twice in his career. So, great for him. He really did knock it out of the park this week. Truly an incredible kicker. On to what really is our news of the week. Okay, it's the injury report. Week 2, we had plenty of victims before the games and in the games. Lots of not great news if you're a fantasy player, if you play fantasy football. But I'm going to jump into it, Duncan. We haven't had an injury report like this in a long time. We kind of moved away from our injury report a little bit last season. So this is a little bit bigger than what we have done in the past. So anytime you want to interject, you interject on me, because I am switching over to my show sheet and I'm reading right from it. Okay.
I mean, let's just, before you even really get into it, can we just talk about Tua?
Let's talk about Tua.
I mean, that's gonna be an extended conversation. So
yes, it is. So Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, with 4:24 left in the third quarter in the Bills game. The Dolphins are down 31-10 on a 4th down. Tua Tagovailoa has a keeper. He runs pretty much straight up the middle, right into Damar Hamlin's chest. The irony of it with Damar Hamlin is not lost on NFL fans. That was noted. Tua immediately goes down in his attempt to, I don't want to say attempt to collide, but in his collision with Damar Hamlin, he lowers his shoulder and seems to exert a lot of force towards Damar Hamlin. Almost, in my words, it was like he was trying to like grit it out, really, like trying to like grind through it. Whereas you can see Damar Hamlin in the video kind of back off a little bit. And you see a lot of defenders do that, especially on QB keeps and QB draws. because you get penalized anytime you poke a quarterback. So he's trying not to do that in the red zone this close in a fairly close game, right? It's not a huge blowout at this point. So Damar Hamlin backs off a little bit. Tua goes down with an obvious head injury. And I didn't notice it during the live stream, but I did notice it on the replay, which they played way too soon on the broadcast again. Thursday night prime football. I have a real gripe with how they handle this. He does go back into that posturing position. If you do remember from his last one, which was Bengals?
No idea.
Bengals. I think it was against the Bengals was the really bad one.
Are you sure not Damar Hamlin?
No, I really think Tua's was against the Bengals.
I believe you. I have no idea.
I am not 100% certain on that, and you can't quote me on that part. But he goes down, he does posture, and he is taken off the field with a presumed concussion. He's ruled out almost immediately. The conversation now has shifted towards, well, one, they have decided to place him on IR. Mike McDaniel came out earlier in the week and had said that he wasn't sure. They kind of like held off on putting him on IR. They weren't sure what to do yet. And now they chose to do it. The huge conversation here is Tua's long-term health. And should Tua Tagovailoa continue playing football? This is now his fourth major concussion. He had that one that everyone remembers, the one where he definitely got
it was
hit
the
in the
Bengals,
head.
by the way.
Okay, perfect. So
and
it's
the
Bengals.
Bills is the one where he continued playing in the game.
Yes, Bills where everyone watched it and said, "Oh my God, that guy has a concussion." Continued playing in the game. The next week he got hit. That looked ugly. Got taken out. So that was 2 concussions in short succession. I've talked here about second concussion syndrome. And then now this one. So that's 4 huge concussions.
The Packers on Christmas Day was the 3rd.
There we go. So now it becomes, at what point does Tua step back? At what point does someone step in? What to do about this? Because now it's becoming blaringly obvious. And there's so many lenses to view this through, right? Because 1, I think this is a huge PR crisis for the NFL. 2, I think it's a safety crisis for the NFL. I think continuing not trying to look into finding a way to make him stop is hard. There's videos of Tua's dad who very much influenced him to play in the NFL, and how that may weigh in on Tua's decision. Tua has come out and says he does not plan on retiring. So that's kind of that for right now. I guess we'll see how this recovery goes for him. Duncan, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't know. I was wrestling with it for a while. It was really crazy.
Yeah.
I was at a bar for a friend's rehearsal dinner. We were playing trivia, and we saw the game was on, and we kind of saw it, and it was one of those things where it's like we weren't fully watching the game, but then it happened, and we're like, wait, did what happened just actually happen? Then we look on Twitter, and we're watching through it, and again, it's just like, good Lord. Just don't like to see it.
No.
You obviously can't stop him from doing what he wants to do, short of cutting
Firing
him. Yeah, but if he wants to play football, there's probably going to be someone that will pay him to play football, because it's a business at the end of the day. I just really hope that he does what's best for him and his family, because it's really terrifying.
There's 2 little kids.
Yeah, that's... I can't sit here and be like, I can't just crap on him for being like, why are you retiring? Because I've never been in that position before. I can't relate. But it is crazy. Especially I compare it to the guy that I hear talking about it a lot in a very different manner, but Jason Kelsey, he's always, he was in the booth for Monday Night Football for most of the 3rd quarter. And, he was, Joe Buck was asking him, do you miss it? Do you think you shouldn't have retired? And he's like, I miss it, but then I stand up and my knees hurt and my knees don't miss it. And it's like, that is very real as a 13-year NFL veteran. His life is not going to be comfortable.
No.
Physically. and that's not dealing with his head.
Yeah.
All of the horror stories of what we've heard from people with CTE is really scary in general, and that's not people that have had 4 horrifying, very public concussions. So
when the NFL partnered with Boston University to do their first kind of deep dive study into CTE, I believe it was back in 2013, 2012, of all of the NFL brains, 99% of them had CTE, right?
Yeah.
And there are varying
all to
levels
varying
this.
degrees, of course.
There are levels to this. Now,
clear.
those are people who played one season, people who played a whole career, people who were on offensive line, people who were quarterbacks. Not all of them report having concussions like this. And we've seen Tua take big hits that weren't concussions. They're just big hits. He gets sacked. He gets banged up a little bit. A small hit to the back of the head produces those tau proteins, which I've talked about endlessly on here. It's like the second time we have to have a head conversation in 2 weeks. But it is so detrimental to just play football and not get hurt. So to see this happen, it's so hard to not believe that this isn't a he in 5 years is going to forget where he put his keys. It's where do you end up with your family and your life, and what is your quality of life moving forward. And I pointed out on the next day that Dr. Bennett Amalu, who was the guy who discovered CTE in Pittsburgh.
Will Smith.
Will Smith played Dr.
I know
Amalu
it's not
in the movie
literally
Concussion.
Will Smith,
Yep.
to be clear.
Yep, Will Smith played Dr. Bennett Amalu in the movie Concussion. He discovered CTE in Pittsburgh, and he put out a video statement just about 2 years ago. It's about two weeks short of 2 years ago, and said, Tua, like, gracefully step aside. Like, there is so much more than this. Like, you have to think about your long-term health. You should I had tweeted one of the exact quotes, but it was beautifully worded tweet, but from the man who discovered CTE, who hasn't really weighed in on specific players before. He still weighs in on protocol and things like that, but he weighed in on Tua 2 years ago and told Tua to step aside. And I think that says a lot, but Tua for now says he won't. And as someone who had to step away from my sport because of injury, I kind of was forced to step away because of injury. I didn't really have a choice anymore, but I, from that side of it, can understand it, because it is your identity. It's who you are. It's not your whole identity, but it's a huge part, right? But at some point you have to step aside and say, I'm also a sister. I'm a father. I'm a this, I'm a that, and weigh those pros and cons. And I don't doubt that Tua is doing that right now, but at this point, he currently says he will continue playing football.
Yep.
Yeah. So that started out week 2 hot. Stick with us. We're going to give you a brief ad, and then we will give you the rest of the injuries from week 2 of the NFL. All right, we're back. We have a couple of other quarterbacks on the injury report this week. Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert got rolled up on during the game on Sunday. He had some tests done. Harbaugh says that he's working through an ankle injury. He didn't reveal anything from the tests. He doesn't seem to be too banged up, but Harbaugh says working through it. So he seems to be fine. Something to note, though, Steelers quarterback Russell Wilson is still out with a calf injury. Fields is starting again this week. So much for naming Russell Wilson as the Steelers starting quarterback. First 3 weeks go to Justin Fields. And Packers quarterback Jordan Love, good news of the day, returned to practice today for the first time since that week 1 MCL sprain in Brazil on the Friday night game. Way earlier than expected, but back at practice, still in a very limited capacity, but back out there moving around a little bit. Better than expected. All right, on to some running backs. Jags running back Tank Bigsby left the game with a shoulder injury. Titans running back Tyjae Spears left the game with an injury. And our 2 big running back injuries of the week. Chiefs running back Isaiah Pacheco left the game with an ankle injury. The tests later showed that he had a fractured fibula that required surgical repair, which was done today successfully. He will be placed on IR with a reported 6 to 8 week recovery. In a corresponding move, the Chiefs signed free agent running back Kareem Hunt. And the Niners officially placed their star running back Christian McCaffrey on IR with his calf/Achilles injury that seemed to be downplayed throughout the beginning of the season. The end of the offseason, beginning of the season seemed to be downplayed, and now Christian McCaffrey is placed on IR. He is not the only Niners person who will be on the injury report. The next person would be Niners wide receiver Deebo Samuel, who's slated to miss a couple of weeks with a calf strain. So expect this Niners offense to look incredibly different than what they expected or hoped or planned for in the coming weeks. What? You want to chime in on that at all?
It's time for Ayuk to earn the deal that he just
spent
signed the offseason trying to get.
Seriously. Another offense that looks completely different than how they expected is the Rams. Rams wide receiver Cooper Kupp injured his ankle on Sunday's matchup. He was seen leaving the stadium in a walking boot. McVay came out and said he'll miss extended time. He was not placed on IR today when the Rams placed offensive lineman Jonah Jackson and safety John Johnson on IR today. But he will miss extended time. So I think they're going back and forth. I don't know if they even have IR spots left because Puka Nacua, their other star wide receiver, is already on IR. So the Rams are banged up. Pretty much the entire team. It feels like the Kennedy curse, but like for the Rams of the 2024-5 season. Don't know what's happening there. Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson is considered day-to-day after a quad contusion he sustained in the Vikings win this week over those Niners. Eagles wide receiver A.J. Brown was officially announced out on Sunday ahead of the Eagles Monday Night Football matchup with a hamstring injury. He came out and says he will miss a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I want to be very clear about that. So on Friday, it was reported that he pulled his hamstring or something. He felt to tighten up. We're all thinking he's a game time decision. He ends up getting called out. That's fine. That's great. Then during the game, in an interview with Lisa Salters, during the game, he says, yeah, I'll probably be out a couple of weeks. That was the first time that we heard this was not a one-game injury.
Yeah.
Let alone that he was already sure he was missing a couple weeks. Yeah. So that sucked.
Yeah. Insult to injury. And then the Eagles lost. Tight end / quarterback / running back / man of all trades Taysom Hill left the game and did not return with a chest injury. Giants kicker Graham Gano left the game with a hamstring injury that was muffed by the Giants. He got hurt in pregame or like twinged it. Wow, the Giants messing something up with a kicker for the second year in a row. No, couldn't be the New York Football Giants. On defense, the big ones, Jets linebacker Jermaine Johnson has a torn Achilles and will be out for the rest of the year. Bucs defensive tackle Vita Vea is expected to miss some time with a sprained MCL, and Colts defensive tackle DeForest Buckner is placed on IR with an ankle injury. So
there's also Jawan Bentley. Who's apparently he's like a team captain. He's apparently a pretty big name for the Patriots, linebacker out for the season. So wanted to throw that out there. Yeah,
I missed a couple in there because I'm trying to shrink it because again, you and I narrowed down injury report last year, and this is the first week that we've had like a carnage of an injury report. That
it was miserable, and so many of them weren't even. Like, so many of them were not even during games. That was the weird thing to me. Like, you had A.J. Brown and Deebo Samuel that were not during games. They just suddenly, it was a thing. Christian McCaffrey was placed on IR. He hasn't played this season. He missed last week. Then he was placed on IR. Russell Wilson, haven't seen him this season. Jordan Love, it happened during the game, but it was also on the second to last play. Marquise Brown went from like he's missing week 1 to he's actually out for the entire regular season.
I forgot to even name that one.
Yeah, he's out for the entire regular season.
Yeah.
So, really weird week in terms of injuries, and all just very bizarre how it all happened as well. So
didn't like it. My fantasy teams didn't like it. The AJ Brown thing is gonna really hurt me in the long run.
Wow, it's gonna hurt you?
Yeah. Just me.
It hurts me on an emotional level.
Yikes. All right. Let's talk about some really quick fun facts. 2024 NFL draft quarterback class sets a record with 0 passing touchdowns on 196 combined passing attempts in the first 2 weeks. 0 passing touchdowns from them.
I mean, the obvious reason they have that record is because like 9 of them were drafted in the first round. I know it wasn't 9; it was at 6. I think they tied the record. I don't know.
Yeah,
They tied the record. So like obviously, but also holy crap!
Yeah,
none of them have thrown a touchdown. Well, I guess Penix hasn't played. Caleb Williams hasn't thrown one. I don't know why I'm checking the math. It is so obviously correct.
Bo Nix
sucks. Who also drafted a quarterback? Oh, Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels.
Wow. I think he has a rushing one, but
does, yes, but no passing touchdown between.
Wow, crazy.
Yeah, crazy. Did you know that before Sunday, NFL teams were up 1,132-0 when they score 3 more touchdowns than their opponent than regulation until Sunday? The Giants lost with 3 touchdowns to the Commanders, who had 0.
They suck.
Whom now make the exception. So now NFL teams are 1,132-1.
I love when those streaks that you didn't know existed get broken.
Yeah.
Really love it.
Good job. The Giants have also been 0-2 in 10 of the last 12 years. And the Cowboys give up 35 points in the first half, which is tied for the most in franchise history. Yay.
I hate the Cowboys.
I hate the Cowboys. All right, Duncan. You want to talk about some defeated and undefeated teams?
Yeah. So we just want to go through. We want to point out the ones that kind of surprise us, the ones that we're impressed with, anything that we have to talk about. I want to start with the Buccaneers. I mentioned it during my breakdown, and they're not just 2-0. They're also just a really impressive 2-0.
Yeah.
Obviously, Chris Godwin had a hell of a week this week, but Baker's just looked incredible. The defense is as good as, as it's been. They beat a really good Lions team. I forget who they're playing this week. I probably should have looked that up beforehand. But really, it's just like they've been impressive. Do they play the Eagles? No, they play the Broncos. So there's a really good chance they go 3-0. Then they play the Eagles. Yeah, they've just been really good. And
Agreed.
I ditto that to the Saints. I mentioned that as well. They're both 2-0. The NFC West is suddenly very interesting. I have a little more faith in the Buccaneers than I do the Saints because I think there's just a built-up amount of they keep kind of getting better. Really good coaching staff that I really like, and the Saints just scream
trap.
They're not gonna. They can't keep it up, right? Not to the.
I don't know. I keep texting you
3
times a week that it's just the words are just Clint Kubiak. And
yeah.
What? I'm thinking about him.
Yeah.
He has been incredible. I think he has made the Saints offense, which is fairly the same thing as last year, look a lot more dynamic, a lot more fluid. Derek Carr is playing in an election year, which apparently is a thing. He does his career bests are always during election years. So it's I don't know, to me it does scream trap because it's the Saints, but and Dennis Allen is still the head coach, right? Yeah, and it's Dennis Allen, right? He's fine, he's whatever. But I feel like they're not going to fall off a cliff. I think seeing the production and usage across the board from the Saints has given me a little bit more hope than feeling like they started here and they're just going to fall completely off the radar.
Yeah. I don't think they'll fall.
Which is how I feel about the Steelers. The Steelers are going to fall off the radar and
not good,
not exist.
To watch. It's
oh my god, it's so bad.
I will say my favorite thing about this Saints season so far is just all of Twitter towards Clint Kubiak. I remember there was one tweet I saw that's my daughter is gonna hate it when I name her Clint Kubiak.
Yeah,
love that one. Just a ton of crap like that. I
saw one that was Clint. It was one of the all 22 shots of a Saints play, and someone's Clint Kubiak be in the film room on shrooms.
Yep.
The play designs are wacky. The usage of the way they're using motion, the way they set up the receivers. I mean, it's wacky. You have to be a weird mofo to come up with some of those things.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. But I will see if they can keep it up.
Yeah.
Speaking of surprises, the Minnesota Vikings, Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
Arguably the MVP frontrunner right now.
It's insane. That is insane.
Yeah, it's him and Derek Carr, really weird, and Baker.
What year are we in?
None of them. That's never happened. It's not even 2 old guys. It's Sam Darnold and Derek Carr. We're in an alternate reality where Sam Darnold was a good draft pick and Derek Carr it was that one, and it happened to align with that one season where Derek Carr was sort of an MVP candidate until he tore his ACL. Like, that's the alternate reality year that we're in. I feel like that was like 2016 or something.
Well, Baker Mayfield took the Browns. Baker Mayfield was good and took the Browns to the playoffs in 2018.
Is that one?
So that's like
Derek
his.
Carr. Was Sam Darnold the same draft class as Baker? He was, wasn't he?
I think so.
He was, yeah, and Daniel Jones. Wow. Weird.
And Daniel Jones is the worst one out of all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the year that he tore his ACL?
If it's 2018, that's the same year that Baker took the Browns.
How is ACL not on his Wikipedia? Are you kidding me, Derek Carr? Like, how? He did tear his ACL, right? That's the thing that happened.
It wasn't knee injury, right? I don't know if it was ACL specifically, but
maybe it wasn't. On Christmas Eve, it was just a leg injury, fibula fracture.
What year?
Oh, sorry. 2016. Oh, I was spot on. Actually.
You were right. You were right.
And it was a linebacker. It was Trent Cole, former Eagle great, who did it. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so like this weird mix of
2016 and like
2018.
Well, it has to be an alternate reality where Sam Darnold was good. So it has to be at least like 2019 or 2020 by that point.
Okay.
Maybe one where COVID
is this one where he didn't get mono?
Yeah, and COVID didn't happen.
Okay.
That has to be it. I don't think we talked at all about the Vikings, but they've just been like kind of good.
Like, what is that?
I don't know. I'm not buying it.
Me either.
Like, I don't. They've played well. The Steelers haven't played well, and they're 2-0. The Vikings have played well. I'm just not convinced that they can keep it up.
I think I need to like fully tune into a Vikings game next week. Like, I think I need
fair.
to like sit down and watch the Vikings because they're on Red Zone. Like, I watch a lot of Red Zone, and then I tune back and forth from specific games to learn more and check things out. And always a Giants game, sadly, because I hate myself. But I need to like tune in and actually see how they're doing these things because it feels like somebody is just like hitting randomize, and then it's like Viking score. You know, like, so I need to like actually figure out how they're doing that.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I will say I don't really have the need to talk about any one-on-one teams. I already kind of mentioned that I'm impressed with the Patriots.
Agreed. I was there this weekend.
But
so fun.
It is interesting to me that the entire top of the NFC, the only undefeated teams in the NFC are the Vikings, Saints, Buccaneers, and Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
At least the AFC makes sense. You've got the Texans, the Bills, the Chargers, and the Chiefs. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
NFC, you don't. Which makes me even more angry that the Eagles lost to the Falcons because it's just like...
Yeah, you have 3 NFC East teams in 1-1. You have 3 NFC North teams 1-1, and you have 3 AFC East teams 1-1.
Yeah. And then when we look at the win list, I mean, the Ravens and the Bengals, Bengals week 1 was obviously just pretty horrendous. They've got a bunch of weird shit going on over there. The Ravens, I think, have looked good. They've gotten more unlucky than anything. Obviously, the Raiders played out of their mind to shout out to them in week 2. But I'm not really worried about the Ravens. The Bengals, I'm still not like. I mean, I was already hesitant on them preseason, so I'm not really fully back in. But it was just a nice sign of life to see them competing with the Chiefs.
It was absolutely, and I think they need to figure out. I have to sneeze. I feel like they're not using their weapons to the best of their ability, and I feel like they have to get a little bit more creative in the play design. And I know that the Bengals never ever start hot, like ever. They're allergic to that.
They start 0-2 like every year for like the last 4 years. I think.
The Giants, who are no surprise down in the winless
That's
category along with the Panthers.
Too.
I think the Rams are a little surprising, especially after the game that they played with the Lions, because they really hung in there. But again, that's just the injury bug for the Rams.
Yeah, I don't think it's surprising given the context. Like the Ravens don't really have injuries. Their 0-2 is surprising. The Rams, it's like, okay, they lost Puka Nacua, but they were still able to compete with the Lions, and now their whole team is dying. So it's like, I kind of just think their season is over.
I agree.
Because, like, I
agree.
I think they're in a good division, I guess.
I think, I mean, the Cardinals are better than expected.
Yeah. Probably should have mentioned them in the one-on-one category. I did that during the 15-second frenzy, but
Yeah, they're a little frisky.
I'm not willing. Look, I'm not willing to build him up just yet because I hate Jonathan Gannon and everything that he did to me. But
They remembered that
Marvin Harrison
Jr. was there. They were like,
Yeah.
"Oh man, we
that
drafted
was
that
fun.
guy."
That was fun.
Yeah, that was very cool.
Yeah.
But they're a little frisky. I don't have like you said, I don't have full confidence, but I think
Not willing to say anything about them.
you don't want to say that they're frisky.
No,
the
because
Cardinals?
I hate Jonathan Gannon and everything that he's ever done to me.
All right, so who's frisky to you?
Frisky. I'm gonna go with the Raiders.
Okay.
I don't even know if I believe that really.
I don't think you believe that. I think you
No,
just
I think the Patriots are frisky.
Okay.
Frisky is a better word for the Patriots. Frisky is a better, yeah. It just seems like they're well coached. They don't have a lot of talent.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to matter so far all that much.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But
the players are really rallying around Gerard Mayo. Yeah, and it came down to a doinked in field goal in overtime for the Seahawks to win. So they were like genuinely this close to going 2-0.
Yep.
Duncan, who is your biggest winner of the week or winners?
Why don't you go first?
I can go first. My biggest winners of the week is Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and probably Cam Newton for getting out of North Carolina. Run as fast as you can and go so far away from that Panthers organization and David Tepper and succeed in whatever capacity, whether it be Cam Newton's weird podcast or being Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold and being like MVP frontrunners in week 2.
Good point.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
Yeah.
My biggest winner. Honestly, I think it's the Cowboys.
Because the Eagles lost?
Because the Eagles lost in embarrassing fashion on national television.
Okay. I had them in my loser category.
They are losers. Don't worry. They're losers because they got blown out by the Saints. However, does anyone care? Not really anymore. It does like they Eagles fans can't say anything. The Eagles lost in a more embarrassing way on national television, and the Cowboys can kind of just move on. Like I do actually mean that I think they won big time. It reminds me a lot of when the Cowboys lost in the playoffs last year in embarrassing fashion, and suddenly the Eagles, who we were on that free fall, every Eagles fan was like, all right, if we lose, I don't really care because the Cowboys just embarrassed themselves. I think it's that, but the opposite. I think the Cowboys, if the Eagles had won, there would be a lot more scrutiny on the Cowboys than what just
I agree.
happened.
I think they escaped the limelight.
Yeah, they escaped the limelight and
2.
falling a very important game behind in what we expect to be a closely contested, not only division, but NFC. So
yeah, I can see the perspective on it, but watching Jerry Jones in the booth and Mike McCarthy's seat, which has presumably been kind of on fire for 2 years, like that, having a game where you come out flat and cannot fix it, and you're using Zeke Elliott, still paying him his old money and him being and his new money, and then being the only guy who could do anything, and then losing with the most points scored against you in the first half of a game in your tied franchise record. That's bad. That's a loser to me. I have 2 other losers. The guy in the whole body green paint at the Eagles game. Poor guy. He had to go home and watch that off and think about that whole game the whole time.
We're used to it. He's not a loser. He's used to it.
It's okay. I'm thinking about him.
Years and years of
my biggest loser of the week is Doug Peterson and his weird tension obsession with Press Taylor and their current 7-game lose streak with Trevor Lawrence as a starter.
Oh my God, holy crap.
Current 7-game losing streak with Trevor Lawrence as a starter. And him wanting to keep Press Taylor attached to his hip is going to get him fired. I think he actually is leaning, if the Jags don't win a game very soon, I think they're going to be looking to fire him before the season ends.
Yep. Said the same thing on.
Yep, you did, and I had written it down.
I know you had already written it
down there. I was literally.
I had also already had it written down, but
yeah, the Jags are a mess, dude. We really should have talked about them. You want to talk about them for a minute?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm gonna give him one more week.
Okay, one more week, and then we can talk about.
Doug has earned that from me.
From you, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, my only loser is me. I hate the life that I'm living. So That's all I got.
Did you win in our Dynasty League this week?
Which one, Ashley?
The Jax's League. The one where we play against each other.
We played each other this year?
No.
Oh, this week? What, undrafted?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm 1-1, so maybe. Oh, I played
My
Jackson.
my team keeps winning, and I don't understand now.
Oh, I did win.
Oh god,
Sick.
I lost Cooper Kupp on that team. Oh my god, I have no wide receiver.
Sick.
Oh god.
Oh, you beat Jax last week.
I did beat Jax. I'm 2-0 this year, but
yeah.
Anyway, Duncan, that about wraps up week 2. Thank God it's over. Jesus Christ, I'm so done with week 2. On to week 3. We will see you here next week to talk about it. Duncan, in the meantime, where can they find you?
You can find me not going to New Jersey to watch my professional sports team play, unlike Giants and Jets fans, which thank God, because I would have been miserable because I could never make fun of you for it again. However, the Philadelphia mayor has officially announced that they've come to a deal with the 76ers to remain in Philadelphia. So thank God the team named after the year that Philadelphia became like the capital of America or whatever is not moving out of Philadelphia. Thank God. That would have been fucking embarrassing. So you'll find me in Center City somewhere at the new arena in like 9 years. So, yeah.
And on Twitter.
And on Twitter at mpduncan75.
You could find me, Duncan, the entire Undroppables crew on our Discord channels, which you can gain access to by becoming a patron at patreon.com/theundroppables. You can find me and Duncan live 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday nights. That's live on YouTube, live with a stream on Twitter, even though StreamYard and Twitter stopped working together or whatever. You can still watch us there. You can listen to us back wherever you get your podcasts. I'm done listing them and getting in trouble from Duncan. You can watch us back on YouTube at any point. You can find all of our old content there. And you can find me on Twitter at Ashley_Marie. I hope week 3 treats you better than week 2 did, because I don't think anybody had fun this week. So we hope to see you here to talk about week 3 next Wednesday night. Have a good time until then.
Go Birds.
Bye.